Welcome to the board wrap-up as we wind up the 2014-15 school year, get set for the summer. The Ponca City Board of Education holding their May Board of Education meeting. We've got Superintendent Dr. Pennington with us, and a lot of things going on here at the end of the school year. I guess a good place to start, though, would be those retirees and those wonderful administrators and teachers that are leaving our school system.
Well, you know, it's always a bittersweet time of year. You know, you're always excited at the end of the school year, especially a successful one like we've had this year. Which, you know, in Ponca City, you get to say that all the time, you know, that we've had another great year. And we have, but we had some people last night who you know, got a clock and they're going to leave us, and it's going to be big losses. I mean, it really is. Some really quality classroom teachers, especially in our early childhood program. I think I sat there last night and calculated that we've had like maybe 120 years of experience that's going to leave us this year to go do other things. And, you know, I mean, that's it's important that, you know, people get the opportunity to do that when they put in 37, 38, 40. I think we had someone last night who'd been a teacher for 42 years. I mean, I can't even imagine being in the classroom that long. So that's a big loss for us. We lost, you know, some really quality administrators. Janet Silke and Becky Kruger have decided to retire. And then on a personal note, you know, my right hand is retiring. And Mary Ladd, who has served 5 superintendents, has decided to retire out of that role. And you know, that's going to be a big loss. Anybody that has someone that they work closely with, especially an administrative assistant, and really Mary's not even an administrative assistant. She's an executive director of really all the office staff, and so for her to retire is going to be a big loss. In fact, Shelley Aird, our Director of Human Resources, came to see me last week and said, you know, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to start interviewing somebody to take her place. And so we're probably going to start that process next week and as we try to fill Mary's spot. So it's going to be a big loss for us. The positive is that she's going to still continue to do PR for the district. So she'll still be doing our press releases and writing articles and keeping the community informed about what's going on within the school system, which is a critical role, and really in recent years has probably been what's taken most of her time is doing those kinds of things. So and I'm happy for all the retirees. As I get older, every time I go to that, we have that day, and I keep thinking about, well, you know, when is the day for me going to be that I decide to go and do something else? I got to come up with a hobby first. I got to have something I'm looking forward to doing. I haven't found that yet. So, anyway, that was a big day yesterday.
We wind down the calendar school year, and I guess a lot of projects are getting completed. You know, it's not going to be long before we're talking about August and the start of a new school year. To me, it's hard to believe that the Woodland Trout Washington transformation is now going to go into its next phase.
Right. We actually had a chance to take the Woodland teachers back through their building last week, and so that building is substantially completes the term they use, and so the 1st of June we're going to start moving back into Woodlands, and then the 1st of July we're going to start moving from Trout over to Washington. So we will have an open house probably sometime around the 1st of August so the community can come in and look at the building, but it really is a nice renovation. You know, I've driven by it a couple of times, and it just looks like that's the way it should have always looked. You know, even though it's a dramatic change, it doesn't look. You know, sometimes you change a building it looks good, but it doesn't look. I mean, you can tell you did something different at the building. But with what we've done at Woodlands, it just looks like that's the way it was always supposed to be. So I think it's going to be a great transition. I know our teachers are excited to have that. And even though, you know, anytime you move anybody into something new, even if it's an extensive renovation, it lifts the spirits of the people that work there. And it also lifts the spirits of kids. That's one thing I've noticed as we've built a new building in the south end of town for Garfield, as we've done extensive renovation at West. The kids appreciate that newness. They appreciate new carpet and new tile and redesigned rooms. I mean, they really do. And so I know the students will be excited, and the parents. It's going to be a great. It's just going to be a nice project for that part of our community.
I would imagine that that's the same goal for Trout, is to make it not only more attractive, more safe, conscious, but just to give it a different look, more, as you said, a look as it should be.
Yeah, look as it should be. Add some classrooms that should have been there, so we can finally get rid of all the portables. That's been a goal in this district for a number of years, and so we'll be able to retire all of our portables after this, and so yeah, I mean it's just really an exciting project, and this community really deserves a pat on the back for their willingness to pass bond issues, to do all the construction projects that we've done. When we finish this, when we finish Trout, we will basically have remodeled every building in this district except for the Howell building at the high school. Howell and Anderson are probably the next projects, and those are such big. I mean, those are, I don't know that you can do anything different at the Howell building. And we've continued to update it, and that may be all that we do there, because of the historical significance, the way the building's built. It was a great building when they did it. I mean, they really did some things that will last forever when they designed that, and the way they structured so it was just one of those. Some buildings. I mean, the Howe building's getting close to be 100 years old, mm-hmm. And when you walk in there, you would never think that building was that old. So I don't know exactly what's next for that. Obviously, we continue to work with heat and air conditioning, and energy efficiency, and those kinds of things. We have lots of projects to do at the high school, but that's probably the next. If you think about really, really big renovation projects, that's probably what's next. But by next, I'm talking about probably 10 years down the line, not necessarily, because we've got some other projects we need to do in the interim before we even start to even think about that. So.
Well, one of the great things about this time of year, and I know it's one of the personal enjoyable things for you, is graduation. It's coming up as we record our program on the 25th, I believe.
22nd, on Friday, the 22nd.
22nd, and that is really one of the, I'm sure for you, one of the most enjoyable evenings and one of the most enjoyable events.
Well, that's that's what school is all about. When you have these young people that start, everybody today, all these kids we've graduated the last few years started in pre-K. And so they've been going to school for 14 years. And, when their moms and dads enroll them in pre-K, that starts the process of not only, growing up, but maturing, becoming young men and young women, getting some kind of idea of what they want to do with the rest of their life. And then we bring them to a senior year in high school, and they, maybe put some more finishing touches on that. And then, that high school graduation is not only a symbol of academic success, but it really is a kickoff for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. When you walk across that stage, you're leaving a part of your life behind, and you really are stepping into your future. Now, it's not a huge step. I mean, it is a huge step. It is that now it's time to really sit down and think about, okay, so what do I want to do? Do I really want to go to college? Or do I want to learn a skill that puts me into a manufacturing job, or maybe a more technical kind of career? So they have to decide that. And sometimes kids don't figure that out till they're 20 or 21. I mean, it doesn't happen necessarily the day you walk across that stage. For the others, for the students who are college bound, it's, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to be a businessman? If I want to be, do I want to be, there's just, the world is so open for our kids today. And it is really a great time to be a young person, because guys like you and I, which is the largest part of the American population, is getting ready to retire. And so these young people who are graduating today, I mean, they're really going to have lots of choices of what they do, and so it's a great time to be a young person. And you know, we know that the graduates we produce are quality individuals. You know, I go. It's funny. Since I've been in Ponca City, I just traveling across the state, I run into people everywhere who are POHI grads. You know, and they all say that with a sense of pride. Just like the people who graduate from high school and stay here. When they say POHI, I'm a grad of POHI, or I went to POHI, there is a sense of pride with that statement. And everybody's always proud of where they went to high school, but I've been in 4 school districts now, and I interface with people who graduate from all across the United States, and there's just a little something special about being able to say that they're a POHI grad. And so it's a unique, and something our community can be proud of. Obviously, you know, we hope that the majority of these young people will decide to come back and start their lives here and continue to be a fabric of this community, because that's what makes Ponca City such a unique place. We have a mix of people who are from outside this area who have decided to come and settle here, but we have a strong foundation of folks who are Ponca City, or generational Ponca City people. That's what makes this, and that's what's going to drive the growth of this community. You know, what's going to keep Ponca City viable for the next 50 years is those young people that are in our schools today who, you know, decide to go off, get the additional educational training that they need, and then come back and settle here and raise their families.
From a size standpoint, what are we seeing as far as our graduating class? Is this going to be a bigger class or a smaller class?
You know, it's pretty similar to the last couple of years. We had some really small classes in 2009, 10, and 11. This is going to be probably in the last 10 years, it's going to be on the high side of average. So I think we're somewhere around 325 graduates. Now, you know, how many of those students actually participate in our ceremony on Friday? Because there are some kids who, for various reasons, decide that's not something, you know, they want to do. Walking across the stage doesn't mean as much today as it meant 20 years ago. It doesn't mean as much as it meant 40 years ago, and it certainly doesn't mean as much as it meant 50 years ago. And you see that at the university level too. Graduation's just not as big a deal for the kids. Big deal for parents,
Right.
Big deal for grandma and granddad, but sometimes for the kids it's not quite the same.
Let's talk a bit, if you will, about the meeting on Monday for the May Board of Education. Things that you wanted to pass along that maybe were of importance.
You know, I think the main thing that we discussed at the board meeting that would be important to our community is we talked about legislation and we talked about education budget. Neither one of those are really great things to talk about. From the education legislation standpoint, there's been some bills passed that, you know, I don't know, you kind of scratch your head and go, with all the important things we have to do, that's the kind of stuff you've done. One bill that I think is pretty important. We now have legislation in place that forbids the use of tobacco on school property 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so we passed a new board policy last year that did that for our campus, so it's not a change for us, but it will be a change across the state. You know, we've kind of been dealing with this in increments for several years where we didn't let faculty smoke. We outlawed the use of tobacco, but you could have at athletic events, you'd have designated areas for smoking for football games and outside maybe for basketball games and wrestling events. Public needs to know that's gone. And so if you happen to need to have a cigarette, you better have it before you get in our parking lots and before you come to the ball game, because there's not going to be, I mean, that not only just in Ponca City, but anywhere in the state of Oklahoma from this point forward. You know, of course, for us, the biggest problem we have is not with people who smoke, but with people who use snuff. And so that's something that we're going to try to continue to do a better job of letting the public know that's not allowed on campus. It's always hard to stop because obviously somebody can have a dip and you don't know that. And sometimes you know it because they've got a big bulge. Mm-hmm. And I just say that to the public, you know, they have to understand that we're trying to send a message to our kids. Adults can make the choices they want to make, but young people like to emulate adults. And I just don't know anything that I've read in the last 25 years that says there's anything positive about tobacco use. There's just not. And we definitely, something we don't want our students to be involved in. And it's a struggle, in this part of the country with smokeless tobacco. But we're going to be diligent in trying to end its use, not only among our young people, but among our staff. We have staff members that like to dip, and we're certainly going to try to do the best we can to enforce the rules on our campus for adults as they visit us, that this is a tobacco-free environment, and that includes every form of tobacco there is. And that also includes those little vapor cigarettes. We're not going to have those on campus either. Again, adults, whatever you do in your home or in your car, that's your business. But on our school property, it's not allowable. We would just encourage the public to try to support us in that. The other thing we talked about is budget, and a deal on budgets. We have none. We don't have one yet. We've heard ever since the first of the session that there's a $600 million shortfall. How the governor and the speaker pro tem and the speaker of the House how all three people are going to come together and decide to solve that, none of us know. It was interesting today, we have a $600 million shortfall, but we're talking about doing a $25 million bond to finish the Indian Cultural Center. I don't have a problem with the Indian Cultural Center. I think we ought to finish it. But it just drives home again that we have so many needs in this state that we don't have the funding available to fix those needs, but yet we continue to cut taxes. It is just, I just don't understand it. I just do not understand it, we've got about the fourth tax cut in the last 5 years now, and I've never heard anybody stand up in a public meeting anywhere and say, cut my taxes. I think everybody in the state recognizes we have a revenue shortfall. I think everybody recognizes that we have services that are desperately needed that we don't have the money to meet. And so if we don't have the state resources to meet them, either we need to sit down and completely redo our state budget and cut some programs out or cut some programs further, or we need to raise revenue. And, I think what's happened is the legislature's got themselves in a bind in that there really is nothing else to cut. I mean, I think if the legislature, if they were to come forward today and say that we think we ought to spend $400 million less on education than we're spending right now, I think you'd have an outcry. I think every one of them would be voted out of office the next election. But I think you could say the same thing about cutting Medicare expenditures or cutting services for DHS. I just think they've got themselves in a corner where there's some agencies they can cut, but what they save in that agency is not enough to adequately fund the primary functions of state government. They've got lots of money they're giving away in tax breaks into the business community. But I think the business community would all argue those tax breaks are necessary for them to function. I mean, so we've got a real problem. And so either we've got to restructure what we do and how we spend our dollars, which will be a knock-down, drag-out fight at the legislature, or we have to cut business incentives, which will be a knock-down, drag-out fight at the legislature. And so if you're trying to cut business incentives to fund education, you're going to pit business against education. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to pit, if you're going to cut transportation to fund education. And we saw that as soon as the announcement was made that we've got a $600 million shortfall, you see these advertisements on television about roads and bridges and how our roads and bridges are in bad shape and we've got to protect the money we have and don't cut roads and bridges to fund schools. Well, so we're going to have a poorly educated workforce. We're going to have 35 kids in a classroom. We're going to cut extracurricular activities all across the state so we can have good roads. That's not a choice the people in this state should be forced to make. We shouldn't have to choose between good roads and quality schools. We shouldn't have to choose between good roads, quality schools, and providing the necessary health care for the people in this state who find themselves in circumstances they need help for the elderly or for people with mental illness. We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to choose between quality roads, quality schools, quality health care, and support for children who are under DHS care, who are in families that are dysfunctional, and they need to be able to be placed in a stable environment so they have a chance to grow and to be educated and to become citizens and tax supporting citizens, people who are a benefit to society. Because it's not those kids' fault that they live in those environments they live in. But the bottom line is in Oklahoma, we can't do any of that the way it ought to be done. And the people, who are elected officials, they just kind of throw their hands up and go, well, gee, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to cut taxes. And so we're just going to keep cutting. We're going to have a death by 1,000 cuts. And we've already had 999 cuts. Because I think it's important for the people of this state to remember that even though our state budget is $2 billion higher than it was in 2008, we still have not restored education funding to where it was in 2008. We're still $225 million less in funding that goes into classrooms to hire teachers, to reduce class size, than we were in 2008. And we've not done anything to touch that. We've gotten some money the last couple of years to kind of keep our head above water, but we have not addressed those issues, and that doesn't mean the legislature hasn't done good things. They've continued to pay 100% of the health care for our employees, and they deserve credit for that. But the money that goes into our general fund budget, and that's the money we use to hire teachers with, has not been there. And the result of that is that now our colleges and universities produce less teachers. Our teachers go out of state. Class sizes are high, so people quit the job. They go, I love to teach, but I can't handle 28 kids in the first grade classroom, so I'm going to do something else. And so the result is we've got a teacher shortage. And again, I told this to the group in the chamber education meeting today. None of that's going to change until the people in this state want it to change, because the legislature has heard educators, superintendents, teachers have been shouting this message for the last 4 years, and they're tired of hearing from us. Until people who get up every day and go to work every day, who have kids in school, until grandparents who care about their children, until this becomes their number one priority, it will not change. And we just have to build that coalition. We have to get the message out because it's a travesty for our children. The children that are in Ponca City public schools today are not receiving the same quality education they got 5 years ago. And it's not because our teachers are not working hard. It's not because we don't have the right programs in place. It's because our class sizes at the elementary level are too big. And, we've talked about this. We were fortunate. We found a flaw, a mistake in the state funding formula. And so we picked up almost $1 million that we didn't have before for us to put back into our schools. And we have a plan laid out. We were going to hire 8 teachers at the elementary level to ease class size. We wanted to hire additional therapists to work with our kids. We wanted to hire behavior specialists. We even wanted to create maybe a couple of new electives at the secondary level. We can't find teachers. We can't find teachers. I never thought the day would come where I couldn't just in 24 hours say, I need to find 7 additional elementary teachers to lower class size with, and we would not hire those people within 24 hours. And they're not there. We've hired about 30 people this year already in anticipation of being able to do that. But we've had enough retirements and resignations that all those people we hired that we thought were extra have now been moved into jobs to replace existing staff. And there's no applications left. We had 2 high school counselors resign last week. I'm not sure we can find the replacements. I never thought the day would come where I would have to say, I can't find counselors. But I can't find counselors. I may have to move people from elementary school to the high school in order for us to have a fully staffed counseling staff at the high school next year. And, I don't know what makes something a crisis, but it's pretty much a crisis.
Pretty close, isn't it?
It's getting close. I don't know how smaller rural schools are going to survive. I just don't know. And maybe that's what this is all about, that if we choke out the teaching supply, that people in small rural schools will leave to go to other places, and the small rural schools will have to close because they can't find staff. But there's a reason why people teach in those schools. Maybe that's closer to their home. And maybe that's where they want to live, and maybe they want that environment. They don't want to come to Ponca City and work. They'd rather, they want to teach at Kildare, and they want to teach at Blackwell, and they want to teach at Tonka. Well, it doesn't matter if we pay more. It doesn't matter what we do. That's where they want to be. That's where they live, and that's where they want to stay. And so if that's, I don't know if that strategy is going to work or not.
Big challenge for the summer, though, is to make sure you have enough in place.
If we are fortunate enough to have a fully, if we're just able to fill all the positions that we had in place this year, then Shelley Arrett will have done a magnificent job in finding staff. You know, she'll be the HR director of the year if she can. If she can just fill every position we have in the 2014-15 school year, if she can fill all those positions for 15-16, then we will have accomplished a miracle. So, but Phil, one more thing I want to talk about is our baseball team.
Okay,
I'll make sure.
I saw video of you and Coach Dilbeck at the ball game when they won the other day, and that's quite an accomplishment.
Well, you know, and I don't know, you've been around Ponca City sports for a long, long time. How long has it been since we've been at state baseball tournament?
20 years, I'm going to say. Royden Tilley was our baseball coach, right. And it was back in the days when they did double elimination tournament. But Josh Schaefer's dad was one of the assistant coaches, and Rocky Hughes was our left-handed ace pitcher. And I'm thinking it was about 20 years ago.
I've heard 20 to 25. Nobody's been able to tell me for sure. But it was a really great weekend last weekend. The most important thing in those regional baseball tournaments is to win the first game.
Right.
You know, we were fortunate enough. We beat Stillwater the first ball game 2-0. We were able to beat Broken Arrow, which was the #1 seed. And so we go into that next day unbeaten, and that is such a tremendous advantage. And really, except for one inning in the second ball game, in the third game, the second game was Stillwater, the third game of the tournament, we outplayed Stillwater in every facet of the game. We played basically error-free. We had great hitting, timely hitting. We had, we used every pitcher we had, and we had individuals come in and get outs when it was just fun. Of course, anytime you win, it's always fun.
Right.
You know, if we'd have lost that last ball game, 11-10, we'd have been crushed. But realistically, I think our kids played very, very well. And, I'm excited about this weekend. I still haven't seen the schedule. I guess they hopefully finished up all the other regionals yesterday, and we can find out who we're going to play, and the weather will hold, and Thursday will be a great day, and we'll get a chance to go watch one more high school baseball game.
Have a great end of the year and a great summer. We'll see you in the month of June after the board meeting. And you have a great summer as well. For Dr. Pennington and for Chris Adams behind the camera, I'm Phil Turney.